Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this amazing Lunch and Learn. And I just want to remind everybody that this Lunch and Learn is brought to you by family partners of Maurice and Sussex counties. And here is your host, Patricia Houston, and today our special guest is Gloria Sgrizzi, who is the co-founder and co-director of the organization A Partnership for Change. Welcome, Gloria.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Gloria, for being here with us. So, Gloria, we're going to start. If you can please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'll tell you, I love to share the origin story of A Partnership for Change because it's pretty interesting. So back a long time ago, back in the day, as they used to say, I was working at a domestic violence shelter up in New York State. And I was the director of community outreach and development. So I did fundraising events. I went out and did guest speaking about this issue about domestic violence and dating abuse. And there's where I met Allison Bressler. So she's the other co-founder of A Partnership for Change. And Allison was the director of counseling services at the shelter. So when I would go out and do presentations to the community, and that could be for community organizations, it could be for a business, a school, at the end of the presentation, I would always, and not 98% of the time, like 100% of the time, people would come up after. And they would come up after and it would be, thank you for coming, but I know somebody. This is my mother, this is my sister, this is my best friend, this is my son, this is my brother, this is my coworker. They knew somebody who was affected by this issue and they just didn't know what to do. So I was overwhelmed, to be quite honest with you. So Allison being with, working with victims directly, I went back to the office and I was like, can somebody please come with me who has the background that I'm lacking? Because we have so many people coming up. And she, of course, raised her hands like, I'm going to be with you. This will be great. And we just made a really good team. And we found that our outreach, program really blossomed. And again, it included just community organizations, faith-based communities, businesses, and schools. So we started reaching out to young people in high schools. And then we worked together for about 5 years and we sort of went on our own way, but we always kept in touch. And then Allison called me one day and she's like, when we used to do these presentations, we would always say, there's really not a lot out there just on domestic violence for education, prevention, awareness, and outreach. Now, a lot of domestic violence shelters do the direct services, but this other piece, which is so important, and we knew this from working for a domestic violence shelter, a lot of times it would have to fall by the wayside because you don't have enough staffing, you don't have enough funding to do outreach. So it was always sort of the last thing on the list because you're dealing with victims all the time. You're dealing with, crisis 24/7 when you work at a shelter. So she's like, we always talked about doing something and why don't we put something together here in New Jersey? And that was back in 2007. And we said, okay, how are we going to do this? And we just went around in our local areas and did presentations for free. So we could just get a track record for the agency. And then we secured our first grant. And our first grant was for our teen program. And that was 13 years ago. So we've expanded since then, but our mission as a nonprofit agency serving New Jersey is to end domestic violence. And we think we could do that, or your mission is always your goal that, you hope to do, but we know the best way for us to do that is to do education, outreach, prevention work. We have to stop this before it starts. And that's why our first program, the teen program, really is the cornerstone of everything we do. We have to talk to young people very early about this. So that's our origin story.
That's a beautiful story. And I'm so happy that you guys have the idea. And, right now, this is the result. So we really want to know a little bit more about what is the Partnership for Change. So would you please elaborate in regard to that?
Sure. Okay. So I said our first program was our teen program, and that's called Power Back. And the name comes from, we want to give the students the power back to them because it's really important that they have the correct information about dating abuse, because what we know And again, we've been doing this 13 years. In the 13 years we've been doing this, we have reached for over 19,000 students, nearly 20,000 high school students in New Jersey. Okay. And what we do is when we reach these students in these teen forums that we do, we give them an evaluation or a survey. And so we collect all kinds of data. And one of the things that we know is 72% of the students are saying dating abuse is happening at their school. And 74% of those students are saying if it was happening to them or a friend, they're going to a friend first for help. They're not going to an adult. They're not going maybe to a school counselor. They're not going to a parent. They're not going to a hotline. And when we ask those questions as why, you know, especially with the hotline, is they want to talk to somebody face to face, someone they could trust. Mm-hmm. So Power Back is built on training young people and educating young people and reaching young people about what dating abuse is, how to identify it, what the warning signs are, and most importantly, how to help a friend safely and effectively. So, because what we've also learned over the years is sadly, sometimes friends give each other bad advice. But they're young, they don't know this issue like we know this issue. You know, I remember back in the day being in high school, seeing this in my high school, you know, and not knowing what to say and not knowing what to do and not knowing how to help somebody the safe way. And I just tell, you know, the young people all the time, I don't want you to have the regrets that I have. I think back on those days and I'm like, why didn't somebody come to our school and talk to us about this issue? The other thing about Power Back is that it's comprehensive. So we just don't go into a school and do a presentation and leave. We're with the school from the beginning of the school year through the end of the school year. So we work with developing a cadre of peer leaders. We make sure they get trained, they get certified, they get a certification. We help them do awareness events in the school. And we also provide education for clinical staff, for faculty, for administrators, and for parents, guardians, and caregivers. Because that, when the adults know what's going on and how to respond and how to identify, that provides a wider safety net for young people. You know, because you might be the math teacher in school, and this isn't your background, you're not a counselor, right? But you might have a really good rapport with one of the students in your class, and that student trusts you. And that student might come to you and tell you what's going on in their life. And there's a very small window of opportunity to respond. So you want to make sure that at least you know what are the first few things that you could say, what you can do, and how you could refer that student, because you do have that relationship with them. So Power Back is really comprehensive, and that's what how we designed it, and what we really love about it. It's a grant funded program. It only covers 4 schools a year. So we do have a lot of demand for the program that we just, you know, can't fulfill. But if schools reach out to us, there are some things that we could do, like they might want to just have us in to do a teen assembly, which we will do for a fee, a small fee. And we just want to make sure that the message gets out there, that the kids have the resources. So that program sprung one of our other programs, which is our data, it's domestic abuse training and assistance. And that's because when we were doing the clinical trainings in our Power Back schools, the school counselors and health teachers were saying to us, this is a problem in our school. And only 11% when we surveyed school counselors felt comfortable responding to a student. So when we saw that number, we're like, we need a program just for school counselors, and now we expanded it to health teachers. And that is now done primarily remotely. So a school counselor, whether you're in an elementary school, middle school, or high school, you can participate in our data program if you're down in Cape May, New Jersey, or if you're up in Sussex County, New Jersey, doesn't matter. So that's we were talking before about the advent of Zoom and doing webinars. That's the beauty of it. Now we're not just restricted geographically. So that's our data program.
Wonderful. And in addition to the programs that you just mentioned, do you have any other trainings and programs available for families or providers?
The other one we have for first responders and law enforcement is our Police Response Enhancement Program, PREP. And that's been around also. That was when we developed Power Back. PREP was the next program that we implemented, because one of the things that we learned, again, when we go out and do these presentations, we always do surveys, we try to get as much information as possible, that, you know, the majority of police officers were going on domestic violence calls. They were responding to calls, okay? But only about 26, 27, 28% of them, less than 30%, knew who the domestic violence agency was in their county. So they didn't even know about the resources available to victims. And so our PREP program is open to any police officer in the state. Again, most of them are done now via webinar, but we're starting to come back and do some in person at the police academies. And it really gives police officers, or we have victim witness advocates in those classes, we have attorneys in those classes. It really gives them an idea of what it's like to be a victim of domestic violence. It's a victim impact training. It's not a technical training. It really tries to, you know, impart on our audience what a victim is going through and what they need, again, so you can safely and effectively help them, because you're the first on the scene, right? First responder, you're the first ones there. So you want to make sure that you're equipped with the knowledge and the information to help somebody. Then the other program we have, which a lot of people in your audience may be able to avail themselves of, is our DVSOS program. It stands for Domestic Violence Support on Site. So we developed this program about 6 months before COVID hit. And our idea for the program was to reach out to social service organizations throughout New Jersey, ask them if they wanted a free 2-hour, you know, presentation on domestic violence and how to help your client should they disclose to you. So for example, you might be somebody who works, you know, with people who are experiencing food insecurity. And, you know, so that's really your mission, and that's the agency you work for. But as you're working with a client, they may tell you, you know what, this is what's been going on in my life. So DVSOS helps social service agency staff, you know, learn how to recognize abuse, what to ask, and how to effectively help someone. When COVID hit, that program is now completely virtual. So again, you could be working at, you know, an organization down in South Jersey, and you want to participate. You go to our website and you would find out, you know, a little bit more about DVSOS. And how that works is we do a presentation per organization. So for example, Patricia, if you called us and said, my organization would like you guys to do it, then we would have, you know, a minimum of 10 people that we would ask that you provide from your place, and that when we would do a presentation focused just on your organization. I think I got everything. Yeah, I think those are all the programs that we have. As you can tell,
yeah,
it started off small, but ever growing.
No, but really great resources, definitely great resources. And now, Gloria, that we're talking about domestic violence, what can you tell us about domestic violence?
Well, I can tell you that it's an ever increasing problem. I can tell you one of our beliefs is that when we talk about issues in our society that we're all confronted with, whether it's from bullying, whether it's gang violence, teen pregnancy, anxiety, depression, you name it, other stress-related issues, child abuse, we believe many of the times the foundation for all of these issues is domestic violence. Okay, so when someone's growing up in a home where there's domestic violence, there's just a lot that's impacting you at all times. And this affects you throughout your development. It affects children when they're young. And if it's not addressed, you take those issues into your adult relationships. One of the things that we know is that if you grow up in a home where there's domestic violence, there's a likelihood that you're going to repeat the pattern. So one of the buzz phrases in our field is break the cycle, break the cycle. That's why talking to teens is really very important, because if that was their experience, and they think, I think about, again, when I was growing up, right? Doesn't matter how many years ago it was. If that's what you know, and that you think that's normal, or you think that's okay, you don't know that there's such thing as a healthy relationship if you've only been exposed to unhealthy or abusive relationships. So, we know it's a problem that needs to be addressed. And we hope that through what we're doing, and we know from a lot of the response that we get from people that it's important. A lot of people don't know where to go and don't know how to help, or they're afraid to help because they're afraid they might say the wrong thing. So these are the issues that we cover in all of our programs.
Thank you. Gloria, what is your definition of abuse? And also, what type of abuse you see out there most often?
Great question. And because I'll tell you, especially with younger people, it's like, what is an abusive relationship? What is abuse versus maybe an unhealthy relationship? And the three things that we always talk about when we talk about what domestic violence is, okay, is, do you feel like your partner's controlling you at all times? Okay, so there's control. Do you feel that this is happening over and over and over again? So there's a pattern to the abusive behaviors. And third, are you afraid? And now, when we talk about fear, if those three things are occurring in your relationship, okay, then you're being abused in your relationship, okay? We know no relationship is perfect. We know you're going to have arguments, right? No, I don't care. People have, you're together, you're going to have disagreements, you're going to have arguments. And even if the argument is really bad, or maybe things are thrown, or, something happens that once in a blue moon and it's never happened again, it might not be the healthiest relationship, but it's not abuse. What we're really talking about is, again, something that happens over and over again, where it's just, you think you're coming out of it, okay, everything is okay, but things are only okay for a little while, and then it happens again. Okay, so when we talk about abuse too, most people think it's just physical, right? We know this with young people. When we say, what's abuse in a relationship? Oh, I have to be hit, punched, kicked, slapped, pushed down to the ground. And it is. But the interesting thing is that doesn't happen right away. Okay. In fact, it never happens right away. That's usually what comes later in the relationship. What usually happens first, and what we see, are these signs of emotional abuse. So it's the jealousy, it's the possessiveness, it's maybe somebody meeting you, and after 1 week, they're saying, I love you, you're the love of my life, you're my soulmate. And to us, that's a red flag, because you don't really even know me yet, right? You don't really know me. How could you love me and profess your undying love for me? Okay. But those things are also, especially when you're young, or even when you're not young, you like to hear those things, right? You want to hear that somebody loves you so much, and it's just all consuming, and it's deep love. So you're not thinking of it as a warning sign. You're just saying, I'm in love. This is the greatest thing. We're soulmates, and we're going to be together forever. So it's a progression. And usually with emotional abuse, it might start then with monitoring where you are. And so it's not just, let me check your phone and say who you've been talking to, or who is that person I saw you talking to, but it could come out in a nice way. Like, I'm just worried about you. So when you get to school, check in. When you get to your job, check in. When you leave, check in with me. When you get home at night, check in. Before you go to bed, check in. And the next thing you know, your whole life is consumed with it, and you're afraid, right, that if you don't check in with your partner, something bad's going to happen. Okay. Again, there's that word fear. And the fear doesn't have to be that my partner's going to really, beat me up, or is going to really physically hurt me. It could just be you're going to be harassed and harangued. If you forget to make that call to check in, if you go someplace your partner didn't want you to go, it's not going to stop. You're going to get the phone calls. You're going to get the third degree. And why were you there? And I told you not to. And who were you talking to? And, are you seeing that person? Are you cheating on me? And then it becomes this whole thing. So you say to yourself, I really would like to maybe take that night class and I want to, expand my horizons or go back to school for something. But I know it's going to be such a hassle with my partner. I know I'm just going to be, questioned about what time I'm going, where I'm going, and who I'm with. I'm just not going to go. Right. And when you say that, you're not doing what you want to do. You're not being who you want to be. You're being controlled. So it doesn't always have to be so overt, but it sneaks up on you. It's a progression. So there's verbal abuse, of course, when people know what that is, and people yelling and screaming all the time, and it's always a fight. But it also could be somebody taking something from you, again, using the example that maybe you want to go back to school at night, or go back to work if you've been out of the workforce, or switch jobs or switch a career. And your partner may say, really, do you think you can do that? Because your grades were really awful in school. I don't know that you should really go for that promotion, or I'm not sure that, you're going to be able to maintain, grades, or you're going to fail at this. I don't know about that. And I'm only telling you this because I really care about you. I'm only telling you, I don't want you to be disappointed. So do you see how it's kind of couched in a caring, or coming off as being caring about you, but it's really not. It's about controlling, who you are. The other types of abuse that we talk about is sexual abuse, which of course a lot of people right off the bat, when we ask for examples, they're like rape and assault, absolutely. But it also could be your partner forcing you to do things that you don't want to do, or when you don't want to do it. And the other type of abuse that we talk about is financial abuse, and we hear this a lot. Is your partner is monitoring your spending. They want your passwords to all your accounts. You're not allowed to have access to money. When I mentioned that Ellison and I worked up in New York State, we worked adjacent to a very wealthy area. And people always think this is an issue that affects people who are affluent. But I can tell you, a lot of the women who came to the shelter for services, who came for counseling services, had homes that, I would dream about, like the small closet in their house was like 3 times the size of my apartment, and I would be like, oh my God, if only, you had this money and you could live this opulent life. But they had no access to money. And everything was in their partner's name or their husband's name. If the Girl Scout knocked on the door and wanted to sell them a box of cookies, they wouldn't have $2 in their wallet. They were constantly monitored, what they spent, where they went, how much gas was used in the car. So these are examples of financial abuse. There's so much, Patricia, that I've really left out, but it's a lot. But you have to recognize what abuse is in order to help somebody. You got to know all types of abuse.
And now, Gloria, just for families and providers in here to have an idea, because we know this is a big topic, and all the information, where to get the resources, we're gonna put that information in there. But at least we are having this discussion. That's what matters today, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now that we touched this topic, let's talk about some of the risks of leaving an abuser.
Yes. So this is really, again, very, very important, because if somebody discloses to you, right, if a friend or a coworker, colleague comes up to you and they, first of all, they trust you, right? So they're opening up to you. You have to understand that this could be a very difficult and lonely and scary time for somebody. Okay. And they might not be ready to leave, and they should not make a plan to leave if they're still living with an abuser until their safety concerns are addressed. So one of the things that we say all the time is leaving is the most dangerous time for a victim of domestic violence. So that would be the first thing that you have to let somebody know, that if threats have been made to them, that they don't want to leave without the help of a professional domestic violence counselor that they can speak to on a hotline, and talk about doing a safety plan. When a person leaves an abusive relationship, okay, for the abuser, the reason why it's the most dangerous time is now they're losing control of you, right? When you're with them, they have control over you. But if they feel they're going to lose that control, then all bets are off. That's when the violence usually escalates. So it's very serious. So you don't want to leave an abusive relationship without having a safety plan, without understanding the risks, especially if you've been threatened, especially if there are weapons in the home, especially if you have been strangled by your abuser, your risk goes up. If you are pregnant, your risk goes up. If there are children in the home who are not the abuser's children, your risk goes up. So that's why, again, I will sound like a broken record. And we have information on our website about safety plans, or you can Google, a safety plan to find out about it. But if somebody discloses to you, you want to know the risks so you could let them know, because they may not be aware. Because when you're in this, your life is consumed by this relationship, and you're just trying to survive every day. And what survivors don't realize is they're so strong, because look at what they've been enduring all this time. They really have. So they might think they can't, make a plan or develop a plan for safety or develop a plan to leave. That might not even be their choice to, and that's okay too. But they do have the strength to do it. They really do.
Gloria, since you mentioned the safety plan, what are some of the strategies that can be used to create a safety plan that is effective?
Okay, so first of all, it's understanding what I just mentioned, the risks. So in every safety plan, there's usually like a little checklist of things that you might want to know, and that's one of them. You might want to, we suggest people try to get someone that they trust and develop a code word. So for example, if you're my person that I've disclosed to you and we're best friends and you know what's going on, and I say to you, Patricia, I'm not leaving yet, but I just want you to know, in case anything really, if I feel like I'm in danger, can I call you? And I'm going to give you our code word, and you're going to know to call 911 for me. Okay, so say for example, I'm having an argument with my abuser and I feel things are escalating, and I'm if I can, I might say to my partner, I need to make a phone call because I was supposed to meet Patricia for lunch, and now I'm going to be late, and she's going to start worrying about me. So let me just tell her, I'm going to be late. And maybe our code word is tea. Okay. And I call you up and I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't meet you right now for tea, but I'll give you a call later. I'm in danger, and you're going to call 911 for me. So we have, we talk to people about setting up code words. Part of a safety plan is to make sure if you have any important papers, your identification, anything that you need, that you have copies of it, and maybe you can keep them in a safe place. Could be with a friend, could be, we also suggest people put together a little overnight bag. We call it a go bag with these important papers in it. Maybe a little bit of money if you can have just some, if you can, and keep that bag in a secret place or at a neighbor's house. Make sure you have extra set of car keys, because what if your abuser takes your car keys and you're trying to escape? You have an extra set hidden someplace so you can, if you need to run. If you're at work and you've already left your abuser, say you're out of the relationship, but they've been threatening you and stalking you, make sure you don't walk to your car alone at night. Ask somebody at your job if they could escort you to the car, or if there's security at your job, or make sure your boss knows that, I need to leave when it's daylight. I don't want to leave here in the dark. These are some of the things that compromise or consist of a safety plan.
And Gloria, and now is the interesting part, because how can someone support a person that is suspected of being abused?
Well, as I said before, if somebody comes to you right off the bat, they're really trusting you, right? They're trusting you with something that's really so serious and so private. You have to know, even though this is an issue that's been talked about for a really long time, there's still a lot of shame attached to it. When we talk about who is a victim of domestic violence, okay, there's no profile. Anybody could be a victim of domestic violence. It doesn't matter. And so when we've had women who were, we had one woman many years ago, she climbed Mount Everest, You want to talk about self-esteem? I mean, I can't barely get down the driveway without, getting winded. So here was a woman who was very well accomplished in her life, and but she still had this idea that she couldn't tell people what was happening to her because they would be like, well, you of all people, you're so strong, you're so accomplished. How could this happen to you? So you don't want to say things like that to somebody. What you do want to say is, I just want you to know, thank you for coming to me. This can happen to anybody, and this is not your fault. There's nothing you could do ever to change somebody else's behavior. You can't make your abuser stop abusing. Only that person could stop. Okay, we can't control what other people do. We only control what we do. So you want to believe them. And when we say believe them, you also don't want to say things like, wait a minute, your partner is like the nicest person in the world. I can't believe, really? This is what you're telling me? Like, so you don't want to say things like that. You want to know your resources. You want to listen. Okay, you really let the person talk. Let them tell you their story as much as they want. Okay, you want to document. Okay, there was a famous case many years ago where somebody knew the person she was working with, her coworker, was being abused in her relationship, and she just documented every single day that she was late, or she came in with a black eye, or she came in with a bruise, or she disclosed to her. She just noted it down in a private area, not for somebody to be seen, not using names. And later, when this person wanted to go and make a police report and go for a restraining order, she had all of this documentation. So even for the person who's being abused, to document things, to write things down, let people know that physically abusing someone is against the law. Okay, this is a crime. This is a crime. And one time when I was working on a hotline, there was a woman who called every single night. And it turns out that her husband, who was the abuser, was a police officer. And the hotline worker said to her, he's breaking the law and he knows it. And for that person, that was her light bulb moment. She's like, now I'm ready. She would call the hotline every night. She wasn't ready. The person has to be ready. You don't want to force anybody to do something they're not ready to do. Okay. The person wants to stay. Then we talk about a safety plan. You want to stay and be safe. There are so many things that happen. You can't just change your life like this. You have to think about what about the children? What about money? Where am I going to go? You might not have family right down the street from you. Your family might be 5,000 miles away. So there is so much that goes into it, which is why we always talk about, don't suggest people leave. Don't say things like, well, why did you make them so angry? That bothers them. Don't do it if it bothers them. That's victim blaming. So there's the do's and the don'ts of helping somebody. We have a lot of this information on our website, and this is stuff you can also, again, on a quick Google search, you could find a lot of really helpful tips.
Thank you, Gloria. So let's go over contact information in relation to who to reach out to.
Okay. First of all, if you go to our website, a partnership for change, all one word, .org, and go to our resources page, there are a lot of resources there that you can find. What we suggest to everybody is, first of all, there's a New Jersey domestic violence hotline. I know you're going to put the number up later. Let people know also when you're helping somebody how hotlines work. A lot of people think if they call a hotline or they call a domestic violence shelter that they have to make a plan right away and they have to leave, and that's not true. Okay, they can call confidentially. They don't have to give their real name. Okay, they can call just to talk to somebody. Okay, they can call and do a safety plan with a hotline worker. So use the New Jersey Domestic Violence Hotline. They should be able to connect you to the domestic violence shelter in your county. Okay, if not, you can go to the New Jersey Coalition Against Domestic Violence. That website is also on our website. Connect to them, click on a couple of links, and you'll find the domestic violence agency again in your county. Let people know what domestic violence shelters provide. They do provide safe housing, a shelter, but they also provide a myriad of other services. They have counseling, support groups. A lot of them have a program for children called PALS, which is Peace, a Learned Solution, which is an art therapy program for young children who are exposed to domestic violence in the home. Because again, young kids don't have the verbal skills to express what they're feeling, so they express it through their art. A lot of domestic violence shelters now also offer legal services or connections to legal services. So also on our website, if you click on our DVSOS page and scroll down, you'll find a safety planning brochure. It's called the DVSOS informational brochure, but it's about safety planning in there as well.
Gloria, I want to let everybody know that all the contact information that we're discussing here will be right below this video. And we also have a PowerPoint here that I'm just gonna show everybody, right. But all that information will be there. So let me just show this PowerPoint. Just give me 1 second. Okay.
And thank you for doing that, Patricia. That's very helpful for people.
It's okay. So right here is the information. We had New Jersey 24 hours, domestic violence hotline 800-572-SAFE, and it provides confidential support, information, and referral. Offers bilingual service and is accessible to the deaf and hearing impaired. And then we have the New Jersey Coalition, and this is the website www.njcedv.org. And in here, it has the information, how you can access that. And also we have in here, the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which is the 800-799-SAFE. All this information will be right below this video. So we just kind of giving an overview in here, but all that information will be right there.
And I also want to say for people, you don't have to be a victim to call a hotline. So if you're working with somebody or you're a friend of somebody, use the hotlines. That's what they're there for. 24/7, confidential, free, you know, and say, I'm a friend disclosed to me. Could you give me some pointers? They're there, that's what they're there for. So please use them.
Thank you. Gloria, let's just recap real quick because I know that we run out of time, but we want to make sure to allow time for Q&A. So let's recap real quick if it's possible.
Okay. So we just want everyone to know that if you know somebody, you got to let them know that it's not their fault. You know, thank you for coming to me. There are places you can go that can help you that are confidential and will help you make a safety plan. And you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. If you're not ready to leave, we understand that. Sometimes it's not safe for you to leave. So you're exploring your options when you call a hotline. That's all they're going to help you do. So it's you're always going to be in the driver's seat. So that's something good for people to know.
So thank you very much, Gloria, for being here with us. We're going to stop the recorder to allow time for Q&A. And I just want to say thank you to every single person in here for joining us. Any final thought before we conclude the recorder?
No, just thank you for having us. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here with us. So thank you, everybody. So I'm just going to stop the recorder and thank you again. Just give me 1 second.